Hi, my name is Richard Curtis. I work for Adobe and I look after digital imaging here in the UK. My focus is around Photoshop and Lightroom, but also the workflows around photography around the Creative Cloud. And today what I'd like to do is really talk to you about what's new in Creative Cloud, but also the future of the creative process. So Adobe's been around for a long time and it's always been evolving and innovating around workflow for creatives. And we think the Creative Cloud really solves a lot of the issues that people are facing around working together and collaborating around creative assets. If we look at what's happening in the world, we can see there's a huge shift towards collaboration and the way that assets are worked with. The way that mobile devices are being used is huge, and it's growing at a rapid rate. And the way people work with social networks and the way people collaborate with each other on social networks is changing as well. So not only are people shooting pictures and also shooting videos of each other, they're also collaborating on those as well. And really, for people to really harness the creative process and to work together, there needs to be something that's really robust around the creative process. And that's not just around a JPEG, but that's actually combining things like your InDesign file or video or your PSD files that you have out of Photoshop, or maybe raw files that you're working with. You may want to have peer review with your colleagues and your friends and other creatives that you want to get feedback from as part of that creative process. So it's really trying to embrace everything that creators want to do around the creative process. So to do that, something has to change, and for that to change is really for Adobe to kind of step in and say, you know, we have the best solution moving forward, and that solution we see is the Creative Cloud, which really brings everything together and really will shape the way that creatives kind of come together. So the Creative Cloud, as I mentioned, brings everything together, and not only does it just do the applications, but it's actually the services as well on behalf of that. And those services are really where we kind of add lots of value. So it's really moving away from the thinking of having just a desktop application like Photoshop or InDesign running on your local computer, but actually it means using online services much more, and having those online services integrated into the applications and really start to utilize the power of the cloud, but the power of the desktop as well. So Adobe's highly committed to the Creative Cloud and the success of the creative process and embracing the whole collaboration and workflow issue. And if you can see what's happened since we launched Creative Cloud back in May 2012, we've had a lot of activity. And you've seen in June 2012 we released Lightroom 4 free to all people who were on the Creative Cloud subscription. You can see in August we had updates to Edge and Illustrator. You can see in September we updated Digital Publishing Suite and brought that into the Creative Cloud, and we'll talk about that in a little while. You can see in December, as part of Creative Cloud, we added new features into Photoshop, and we had Photoshop for Creative Cloud. And now you see just before Max this year we had a big update of CC Apps, which came out earlier this month. Not only do we have lots of great features inside the Creative Cloud and the Creative Cloud applications, but you can see here that it really runs across our whole core product suite. So from Photoshop having the new camera shake reduction, which is a great way to remove any blur content from images that may have become sharp but may be blurred due to camera movement, but also introducing a brand new workflow with Camera as a filter. But also in Illustrator having things like the Touch Type tool and having more control over CSS in Dreamweaver, and Premiere Pro being much more about finesse and really refining how you work on your content, be it a DSLR content coming into Premiere, or be it a Red camera or an Arri or a Canon, whatever it may be, that process becomes much more easier to work with. Then inside After Effects you have the bundling of the Cinema 4D application and the Cinema 4D Lite application inside After Effects, which really gives a nice pipeline towards graphics, 3D graphics inside animation. And we're very excited about that partnership we have with Maxon. And you can see there's loads of other stuff in there as well. And this only really highlights, but there's lots of other activity inside the Creative Cloud that aren't really touched on here that we're going to talk about today. Now, once you start connecting the applications to the Creative Cloud, it means you can take advantage of certain things that you couldn't do before. And to give you an example, you may have 2 computers, and you probably have 2 licenses that you're using already as part of your either your Creative Cloud or your normal Photoshop application. But maybe you want to have the environments the same on both machines. Well, that's quite tricky to do in CS6 and before. You have to take the preset files, copy them from another machine to the other machine you want to work at, and that could cause issues. By having an integrated solution as part of the Creative Cloud, we're now able to incorporate the synchronized setting service inside Photoshop or on the other applications as well inside Creative Cloud, which means that at the flick of a switch you can take one environment for one computer over to your second computer, which may be in the studio or maybe in another part of the world somewhere that you're working, which means as a creative you're working more consistently with your environment and you're able to get into an application and then move to another machine without having to worry about are your brushes there or your actions there or your swatches there, because they'll all be there synchronized across both machines. And we manage the conflicts between the two as well. If you look at the Creative Cloud as an entity, you can see all the brand new apps on this slide. So all the way from InDesign and InCopy and Flash Pro to Photoshop and to Bridge. So all of these applications are there, but like I mentioned before, the Creative Cloud isn't just about the applications. The Creative Cloud is much more than that. It also contains something called Desktop Sync. And the Desktop Sync is really the powerhouse of the Creative Cloud. It means that your desktop and your Creative Cloud service is interlinked. Now, it's not available at the current time, but it will be available very shortly, which means that I can take a file from my local computer to my Creative Cloud account and make sure that those two are in sync. And once they're in sync, it means that those files are able to be used then in different workflows across the Creative Cloud. And we'll talk about that when we get to that. As a Creative Cloud membership, as a single user, you have 20 gigabytes of storage, and this applies to full Creative Cloud, but also to single edition Creative Cloud as well, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. There's also another proposition called the Creative Cloud for Teams, and Creative Cloud for Teams is a larger storage. It's 100 gigabytes of storage. It has a few other things of flexibility in there as well to differentiate itself from the normal service. And then of course you have commenting, you have versioning, and you're able to share those files with other people outside of the Creative Cloud, but also you're able to folder share with people inside the Creative Cloud community, and we'll demonstrate that when we get to that point. What really excites me though about Creative Cloud is the acquisition of the Behance application that Adobe purchased last year. And this means I'm able now to take my content straight from Photoshop into my Behance community and be able to then collaborate and work on that with other creatives to get feedback from my photography or my art or my design work to make it better in the long run, but also use it as a learning curve to actually learn more about the application that I'm currently working with. Now, as part of the Behance community, there's also something called ProSite, and ProSite is something that you normally had to pay for within inside the Behance community. But as part of Creative Cloud, that comes for free. And that's really designed around having your portfolio as a normal website that's fed from your Behance community. And we'll go into a bit later on when I show you my ProSite that I created from my Behance, community. And then there's the publishing the iPad apps. Now, from Creative Cloud, you're able to take content from your Premiere or After Effects or Photoshop and create that content and collate it together using something called InDesign, and then take that content from InDesign and have that interactivity published out to an interactive iPad app. You can create as many iPad apps as you wish. They must be interactive rather than just like an ebook reader. So it means you can have video content in there, you can do animations, you can integrate with touch, or without coding, because it's just all in InDesign, so we manage that for you behind the scenes. The only thing you need additionally to Creative Cloud for that to happen is an Apple Developer ID. And once you have the Apple Developer ID, you can then create as many apps as you like by submitting them through the Apple App Store, and then they appear on the App Store for consumption, which you can either charge for or you can give out. That's great for if you're a budding photographer and want to get your work out there, or even a professional photographer and be able to get your work out there for your clients to review or other people in your community to review as well. It may be that you're a wedding photographer and want to get your wedding pictures to the client, and you could do that using the App Store, and then they could distribute that to their family and friends just via the App Store, via the URL there. You're also able to host websites off the Creative Cloud using Business Catalyst, and you're allowed up to 5 websites. So you can host it and manage it all the way from the Creative Cloud and have that attached to a single URL. Now, one of the most interesting acquisitions that we had last year was the Typekit application, or the Typekit company. And Typekit company is really around managing web fonts. But Typekit's kind of changed since we acquired them, and they've now moved into desktop fonts. So as part of the Creative Cloud subscription, you're able to not just have your web fonts on the Typekit network, but also desktop fonts you could then download as part of the Creative Cloud application, the desktop application, which we'll come to in a little while, have those fonts downloaded to your computer and then put into your creative applications, as well as your Word applications or your other applications that you may be using on your computer, both on the Windows and a Mac. Of course, the other benefit about using Creative Cloud is that you don't have to choose now if it's a Mac or a Windows machine. So you get 2 licenses as part of Creative Cloud. You can have those on a Windows or a Mac or a combination of the two. It's entirely up to you, so it gives you a lot more freedom. Of course, the main benefit of Creative Cloud that you don't have to wait for new features in that 18-month to 2-year cycle. You can actually have them as they come out of quality control and engineering, which means you're more up to date with the new features and the new technology that Adobe is creating in our engineering and R&D departments. There's also part of Creative Cloud learning resources as well, so you can actually get access to a load of video content you can watch on how-tos, which may be how to collaborate on Creative Cloud, how to do Photoshop, how to create video in Photoshop, how to use Premiere. All these kind of content is there already for you. And then of course I mentioned something about single edition Creative Cloud. So for some people, Creative Cloud and its whole entity might not be the right way to go. So for those people, you can actually just buy a single edition. In this case, I've got Photoshop for Creative Cloud there, and you can get just Photoshop by itself as part of Creative Cloud. You still get the desktop sync, you still get the 20 gig, and you get some other services as well. And you can find that on my blog, which we'll come to a little bit later on. But also you can get Premiere Pro as a single application, or InDesign as a single application. But if you are looking to use 2 or more of the applications, it's actually better to get the whole suite than you got the whole suite. And I think what people are finding is that once the whole suite is there, they're able to then move across in different applications and then maybe start to cut some video or do some work that they probably wouldn't have done before. And that's a really great value of the Creative Cloud. If we look at the services that come as part of single app, which are the application and the desktop sync application, as well as the storage and versioning and collaboration, which we'll come on to a little later on. You also get access to the Behance community as well as the ProSite community as well. So you're able to do both of those things. And of course you get all your updates as well. So you can see that it's got great value just for a single application, and then also you can upgrade to the single application if you're on CS3, 4, 5, 5, or 6. You can upgrade into either Creative Cloud or the single application for a reduced price for the first year, and then normal price for the second year, and so on and so forth. But really there's some good value in there. But of course you keep your existing license, so if you do upgrade from say 3S3, 4, 5 or 6, you keep that license and you can still go back to that, but you can also use the CC applications as well while you're using them. Okay, let's get into some demonstrations now. First of all, what I want to do is just launch the Creative Cloud itself. Let me just open my screen. So this is the front panel to the Creative Cloud. I'm just going to log in with my Adobe ID. Everyone has an Adobe ID, so your serial numbers are attached to the Adobe ID, and that's how you log in. So you don't have to remember your serial numbers, basically. It makes it really, really easy. Once I sign in, I can see then all my folders that I have inside my Creative Cloud account. Now, one of the things that people do get kind of scared about when they hear about the cloud in any kind of sentence is that everything runs through a browser. So the first thing that comes to mind is, will Photoshop or will the applications run inside the browser? Because that's going to be really complicated. No, the applications like Photoshop and InDesign still run on a local computer. They're just able to access the online cloud service. It's more of a hybrid cloud, if you can think about it like that. Let's take a few things and just walk you through the Creative Cloud web interface before we get onto the more integrated elements. So I'm going to go into this folder here, and you can see inside this folder I have some assets. I have PSD files, I have InDesign files, I have Illustrator files and PDF files, all different types of creative assets that I may want to work with. Let's just take this asset for now that you can see. You can see here's a picture that I took in an airport, and you can see here that I've put some text on the floor with a reflection. But I may want to see that without the text. By having a PSD file, and because we know how to work with the layers inside the PSD, we've got access to all that content. So if I just hover over to the right-hand side panel, you see I have this layers information. If I click on the layers, you can see I have two layers. One's the background image layer and one's the text layer. So I can turn on and turn off that text layer, and in near real time will give me a view of that picture without the text layer, so I can then see what it looks like with that. And if I turn that back on again, you can see now I have that as an image that I can use. Now at this point in time, I can press the information button. I can see more information about the file. I can see that it's a PSD, when it was uploaded, when I changed it, because that might be important. I can see the size and the width and the height and the access type. And you can see the access type is private. That means that nobody else will be able to work with this file unless I give them specific access, which we'll talk about in a little while. You can also see that the Creative Cloud is able to look at the picture and pull out key tones of the image and then provide me a swatch. I can then pick up that swatch and either view that on Cooler and send that across to the Cooler application. If I click on that now, we launch in Cooler, and you can see there that now I have my Cooler screen. I have these colours which I can then modify, or I can save to my themes, or I can include that as part of my comp by downloading it to Photoshop using either just the ASE file, or I could find that on the swatches panel. It's not quite as integrated as Illustrator yet, but it hopefully will be very shortly. But in Illustrator, I can log in with my Adobe ID inside the Illustrator panel, and I can get access to all my themes. Let's just go back to the file section for a second. I want to just take notice of this panel here. And you can see here that I've got some activity. I've got comments on this file. So on the current version, I know it's really sad, but I actually commented on this picture myself so I could show how that commenting works. And you can see there, great shot, love the 3D. And the 3D was all done in Photoshop for CC, and we bring that straight through. The other elements on this panel I want to really focus on are on the actions. So as an owner of this content, I can download that content if I want to from a different machine or a different computer. I can also rename it. I can archive it. Now things go into archive rather than delete, which means that I can always get access to my archive files and restore them back into my main file. Then I can flush out my archive file when I'm ready to get rid of them. I can also search, and we'll use search in a little while. But I can also share this content. I can post it on the Behance network, but I can also send a link. Let's just send a link to someone now and see what happens. By sending a link, you get a little box on the screen, and that box is really around the access type, which is private at the current time. And by clicking on this little icon, we can make it public. I can then allow people to make comments on this image. I can also allow download. And then here I can either email the picture to people, or I can get the link and I can copy the link to my dashboard. And if I just go over to another panel, you can see the actual URL for this link is an encoded URL, which means that no one will be able to copy this URL or make it up. So it means I'm protecting myself and protecting my clients or people using this image from accessing that image from anywhere else. This isn't also going to be part of any Google searches or anything like that, because it's behind our firewalls, which happen to be on the Amazon Web Services system, which means that it's probably one of the most secure and used environments for data content today in the world. So you can be pretty much assured that we're making sure that we have the right security and the right platform for creatives moving forward. Let's just close that down and just go back to my test.cs files. I want to show you a PDF next of all. So because we can look at the file types and look at the type of content, we're able to then to render that content properly. So you can see here, this is a PDF file. You can see that it's got multiple pages, so I can then navigate between pages, so I can go from page 1 to page 2. And you can see here on the screen I have page 1 and page 2, the size and everything else, as well as the swatches that I mentioned, and also recommended apps that I can use to open this file. I can click on this tab here that will take me to the second page, and this tab will take me to the first page. So you can see I've got a nice render of my PDF file, and again got the same actions. If I just navigate over here, I want to open up another file, and this one's going to be this Illustrator file. So Illustrator has a concept of artboards, and those artboards are a way to slice and dice all my data inside my Illustrator concept art that I'm trying to make. You can see here that this has got 3 artboards, but it breaks the artboards into pages, and I can navigate across the pages, and I can press the right little button to navigate across those artboards. I can also go full screen, and I also come out of full screen just by clicking on the screen. So you can see there that we've got great content that we can then use and show inside the Creative Cloud browser application. But it doesn't stop there. We can also bring in, for example, raw files. This is a Canon RAW file, and we've got raw renderers in the back office of the Creative Cloud, which enables us to render those files as they were taken by the camera and then surface them out. Now maybe that I want to move this file as well. So you can see I can actually move this content around. And to move this content around, I'm just going to go back to the main screen, and I can then move, and then I'll tell it where I want to move it. Now I may want to move it into the test.cs files where I just came from. So I can press move, it will then move it into the test.cs files. If I go over there, you'll see now that I have my raw file over here. So I can very easily move things around. Now what you're seeing over here on the right hand side is you're seeing that on my desktop application, you're actually seeing something change. And that is because I've got notifications enabled for my desktop app. Let's go there now and you can see how that's working. My desktop app is pinned to the dock, and in the Windows machine it will be pinned in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. In the Creative Cloud desktop app, which is available using the website, so I'm just going to there now and show you where that's available, just in case you're not sure where it's from. I'm going to go to my download center, and in here you can see I have my Creative Cloud desktop app. I can press download, and that will download the Creative Cloud desktop app to my local machine, install it, and make it available for me. I can also download other applications from here as well, but it actually makes sense to download them from my Creative Cloud, which I'll show you in a second. This has got multiple tabs associated with it. So on the first tab you've got the home screen, and the home screen tells you what's happening inside your network. So this is very similar to the way Google Plus works, and the way Twitter works, and the way that Facebook works. You have followers and you have people that you follow, and any activity around your stream is captured in the home screen. Now there's other things captured in the home screen as well, and you can see there that somebody appreciated some work, which is very nice of them, appreciated some work that I posted up onto the Behance community, and you can see that's actually notified by the Behance little icon over here. I could also click on this username to take me to that user in the Behance community, and then follow them if necessary and appreciate their work if I want to do that. So you can see how you can start to expand your network and the creatives inside your network. You may see that I install SpeedGrade, and then you can keep a track of the applications that you're installing. It may be that you shared a folder with somebody. You can also see, if I just go down here, you can also see that I shared a folder with 2 of my colleagues, Steve Bernard and Rupert Knowles, and I shared that folder with them, which we'll come to in a little while, but you can see as they accepted the share, then that comes in my timeline. So I can see now that they're part of my community when I'm sharing folders. I may want to install some fonts, and we'll come on to fonts in a little while, but also you can see that fonts come in here as well. So this shows me a whole ecosystem of my creative work all coming together in a single feed, which is really, really quite handy. In my apps panel, you can see the apps I've got installed, and you can see there I've got a combination of my CS6 apps and my CC apps all installed on the same machine. Now, what we're planning here is a 5-year rolling window, so it means that I will always be able to have access to CS6 for 5 years and CC for 5 years. And as time moves on, they'll move out the window. So you have 5 years and they move out the window and they keep moving forward. I have also my Touch app plugins, so if I'm using Photoshop Touch or if I'm using Photoshop for Ideas and you want to use them for the bigger applications, if you install the Photoshop plugins and you work with them across the cloud, you're able to take content from your Photoshop Touch application on your phone or your iPad, bring that across the Creative Cloud into your Photoshop application and open it up as a PSDX file, which will then open it up inside Photoshop on the desktop, allow me to work with those layers that I've created on my mobile phones and my mobile tablets. You can also see here that there's some apps that I don't have installed, but I could very easily just press the install button. It would download, install to my computer, whether it be on a Windows or a Mac, install it, and then once it's installed, it's then ready for me to do that. So let's just try that now so you can see what happens. I'm going to click on the install for Adobe Exchange Panel. Adobe Exchange Panel is really quite a nice thing to have. It means you get access to different types of textures and layers inside Photoshop. You can see here what's happening, that you get a 0% bar. This is telling you how much it's installed, and also the top it's telling you what's going on. So it's telling you that it's 0%, and as you can see this goes up as we get more into the download. It tells me exactly where I am inside the download. Once it's finished, it will then install on my computer and then install itself into those applications. So we go into the file system for now. In the files system, this is a preview release, so as I mentioned, that folder sharing, sorry, just one second, you can see here that my Exchange Panel has been installed on my computer as part of the notification system. Just going back to the file system, you can see, so sometimes you might want to share files with another user. Now, that's not there currently at the current time, but it will be coming very, very shortly, but I want to show you how that will work. You've got a concept of having a local folder on the local computer, which is called the Creative Cloud folder. Let's just open that now so you can see that. If I click on the open folder, you can see that I have a Creative Cloud folder, I have my folders, and I have the green ticks against them. The green ticks mean that I've synchronized that successfully with my Creative Cloud account. If I have an exclamation mark, which is orange in the folder, or in a piece of content, it means that it can't synchronize because of a problem, which may be down to the file name, or maybe down to some other technical reason, but there's normally a reason. There's also help screens to help you diagnose any issues around that. What you will notice though is that this file system is exactly the same as on my Creative Cloud. So let's have a look at that now and see how that works. So I'm just going to go to my desktop application again and go to creativecloud.com, and I'm just going to close Chrome because actually those files are available in Safari over here. Click on my Files tab. You can see how I'm navigating this using my tabs at the top left of the screen. Now if I just move this out of the way so you can see both panels, you can see that we have exactly the same content. You can see I have two XMP files here. These are also over here. You can see I've got this 3D lecture, Adobe, Archive, Behance projects, and you can see also Behance projects. Let's just open this up so you can see what's in there, and you can see I've got Bhutan, Cowboys, Iceland, Maine, and a cube file. If I go into here, you'll see I have exactly the same content. So the desktop sync application is keeping these two entities in sync. So let's just do something and see that working. Just go into my files view, and I'm just going to create a new folder on my desktop, which will then synchronize to my Creative Cloud, and that's going to be what's new in CC. So create a new folder, what's new in CC, press enter. As soon as I press enter, the little blue arrows appear, and you can see here that the folder was added to my Creative Cloud account. You can now see I have a folder here that I can go into. That happens to be empty because I've not put anything in there yet. And you can see there that it's completely empty as well. So I could do something like just take a screenshot from my local computer. Let's just take this and just grab this screenshot and then pick that up from my desktop, which is this one, and then drag this and drop this. And as I drag it and drop it, you see the two arrows. You see the arrows over here on my little icon, and you see here once it hits the server, then it gets added automatically into my Creative Cloud account. If I then click on it, you can see that there's my image that I brought in from my desktop. So that's really quite handy. But I don't want to do that really, so I want to delete that. So delete that, and then it deletes that from the server and synchronizes it. So actually you see it adding it and then it removing it, and you'll see that in a second when it hits the server. Okay, let's just go back to my Files menu. Now it may be that I want to share this folder with somebody else, with a colleague maybe, Niels or one of my other colleagues. So on each individual folder now, you've got this Collaborate button, and the Collaborate button allows me to share this content privately with another user. So if I hit the collaborate button, you can then see that I own this content, and I can input the address of another user. It may be that I want to either invite Niels or invite myself. I can say N Stevens, and you can see that it remembers that I've invited him to other folders, and I can then invite him to use this folder. That will then sit there waiting for him to accept that request. So that request will come up and appear in this little icon over here. He'll also get a notification of his Creative Cloud app on his desktop that he's been invited to a folder. I don't think he's online at the moment, so he might not be able to accept that. But when he does accept that, you'll then see a little people over here and show you that that folder is being collaborated on. Now, the beauty of collaboration is that once someone's collaborating with a folder and I update the content, that content is then automatically synchronized to the other user's machine. So say, for example, I'm also sharing that folder with 10 other creatives. Each creative will get a version of that file on their machine as well that they can then work with. If I remove them from that share, it will also remove that folder and its contents from the other user's machine. So the Creative Cloud Desktop app keeps all of that in synchronization. Now, the other thing I have inside the Creative Cloud is something called versioning. So I'm just going to go into the test.cs files and show you this PDF file that I looked at earlier on before I did this presentation. If I click on this versioning PSD file, you can see that I have three elements to this image, 3 different text images. And if I look at my layers palette, you can see that I have 3 layers. And I can turn them on and turn them off, as I mentioned, and that will turn on and turn off those elements as part of that file. If I move over to here, I can see that this file has got different versions. It's got the current version and multiple revisions that was done a while ago. And I can see here that I've got other versions and the size of them and then when they were created. So I'm just going to go into my current version of that file. I'm just going to go into test.cs files. And I'm just going to go into versioning.psd, and I'm going to open that with Photoshop. So once that file opens, it will open it from the Creative Cloud on my desktop. Cool, so now we've got the file inside Photoshop CC. You can see here that I've got the same layers. I've got the Hello World layer, version 1 and version 2. What I might want to do is add another layer, but then keep track of the versions. So let's just go into add another layer, go into the text tool, and add, say, version 3, and press OK. Now what I want to do is save this, so file, just make sure it goes to the right place. I want to save it to my Creative Cloud file, and I want to go and find my test.cs files. I want to make sure that it goes back to versioning.psd, which is this file here, and press save. So I'm just going to replace the contents and replace it with this current version, and then go back to my Creative Cloud files. So you can see there that we've now got on this version.psd file in the Creative Cloud, you can see there now we have the new version, which mimics exactly what we've been doing in Photoshop. Now, you can see if we look on the versioning tab, you can see the activity there. You see we have a current version which was saved just now, but also have the multiple revisions. If I click on this little tab here, you can see when they were revised, and you can see they've been growing over time because I've been adding text to it. But we can look at any point in time, we can look at the version. So if we click on this one here, we will see that it only had version 2. If we go back, we can see it only had version 1, and the original only had Hello World. What I'm able to do now is to restore this. I can restore that, and I can restore the versioning.psd from over an hour ago. This is my current version that I had. Now, if someone was sharing that folder, they would then get this new version, and you can see in the little notification that versioning has been updated by the Creative Cloud. So I can also go back to the old version as well. So I can go back to that revision as also multiple revisions. So I can click on here, and this takes me back to version 3, which I revised from. So it means that I can go back to any point in time in my version history. This will run for a 10-day rolling window, so it means that these changes will stay there for 10 days. After you go past 10 days, you start to remove a day's worth of changes. So that means that I can keep track of that for up to 10 days. So I can restore this current version and go back to where I need to be. And you can see there that my version.psd file is keeping track of it for me. And you can see there again, we now have an updated version on the Creative Cloud. So you can see the Creative Cloud is keeping all the tracks and all the changes for me. If I just go and look at my folder finder, if I go to my Finder window, you can see in my test.cs files, I should have a version.psd file which contains all 3 versions. So it's keeping it up to date for me as part of that creative application. As I mentioned, we're able to have comments. So if we just go back to that version quickly, I'm able to put a comment on it. So let's click on here, go to comments, and I can say I prefer this version over the rest. You can see there that I've added that comment. If somebody else then, as part of that collaboration process, makes a comment, that comment will appear here as well, and then I can get a feedback of what's happening with this file, wherever it may be. Okay, so let's just quit that from Photoshop. Now I just want to go back to, close these windows. Just want to go back to my Creative Cloud. So we've covered pretty much there the files. The other elements on that files panel are the amount of storage I've used inside my allocation. Remember, for a Creative Cloud membership user it's 20 gigabytes, and for a single application it's 20 gigabytes. If I was a Creative Cloud for Team member, it would be 100 gigabytes. And you can see there that all my files are up to date, so everything from my desktop is synchronized to my Creative Cloud. So realistically, if I'm storing content on the Creative Cloud, I will have that content on my local computer as well. If, for example, I want to remove my Creative Cloud account and don't want to subscribe anymore, you can just go online and just download the content, or use the Creative Cloud Desktop Sync to sync it back to your desktop and have that content available without being on the Creative Cloud. But we will keep that content on Creative Cloud for 60 days, so then you can go back at any point in time and get that content. Okay, let's look at fonts. So as part of Creative Cloud and of the Typekit acquisition, we're able now to take not only web fonts on our websites, but actually use desktop fonts as part of our creative applications. You can see here that I've already got some fonts already synchronized, and these fonts will automatically be synchronized by the Creative Cloud app from Typekit through to my desktop. Let's go do that now, and we can look at that. So I'm going to go to my Typekit fonts. I'm just going to close that down for a second. I'm just going to go to my Chrome, my Safari browser, and go to my Typekit here, and you can see here that I've got some fonts. If I hover over the font, you can see I've got this desktop icon and a web icon. Whichever one I pick, I can then use that font for that application. Let's pick one of these. You've got different types of fonts, so I may want to have a mono font, and it will go and refresh based upon that. I can have web or desktop. I've got desktop chosen, and I can have different properties like weight, height, width, and all that kind of thing. So I can pick the font I really want to use. So maybe I want to do something with, say, Otara 8 Standard. If I click on the desktop availability, it will show me some examples of that font, and some different look and feel of different types, different sizes of font. I can also test the font and look at different samples on different operating systems. But I may want to use this font, so I can then click on the Use Fonts icon. On the Use Fonts icon, I can then choose if to synchronize that with my Creative Cloud Desktop application. So I can turn this little checkbox on and press Done. That will now come in as part of my Creative Cloud application, and what should happen is that should then be synced. That may take a few minutes to synchronize. So you can see that as part of my notification that the font errata was added, and you can see now that the errata font has been added into my Creative Cloud application. Let's just test that, go into Photoshop and have a look. So launch Photoshop for Creative Cloud. I'm I'm going to bring in create a new canvas, and that's okay. Go to my text, and I should have in here, in my type library or artist standard, and you can see there that I've got all my versions and all my weights and my type. So if I say ABC, you can see here that that's my new font that was brought into and updated in real time inside Photoshop for Creative Cloud. So instant access to all your fonts in whichever application, even in Word and also in PowerPoint, you can still use those fonts. And we manage those fonts and their accessibility as part of the Creative Cloud desktop application. The other element you might want to do is get rid of fonts. So you can get rid of fonts quite easily by going to Manage Fonts, and the Manage Fonts will show you the synchronized fonts with your desktop application. At any point in time, you can remove the font. So let's remove our artist standard now from my computer. Creative Cloud will remove that from my local machine. Let's wait for the notification. You can see there it's syncing, it's removed it. If I now go into Photoshop and just make sure it's still not, make sure it's not there. It's still there. Let's go into Photoshop and see if that font has been removed. And you can see that errata isn't inside my font list anymore. So we manage that as part of the Creative Cloud desktop app. So that's Typekit. Let's just go in to look at the other element, which is the Behance Platform. Now the Behance Platform, as I mentioned before, is a great way to share your work around the community. So you can see here in this tab, I've got access to a timeline of activity, so I can see if people in my network have added work, or I can see people in my network have looked at other people's work outside of my network, and you can see that they've appreciated there. So you can see here that this has been appreciated, and you can see other elements have been appreciated as well. I could then look at that piece of work, so maybe let me pick one up, this one for example. And I can look at this piece of work, and if I like this, I can then appreciate it, or I can follow this chap if I want to follow it as well. As part of my Behance platform, I'm able then to add work to the platform or view my own profile. I can also look at my own work and see how many views my work has had and how many appreciations it's had. I'm also able to look at work in progress. Work in progress is work that enables me to try new creative concepts and share with a community, or share with everybody in the community, or share with private members of a circle, share a concept to see if something's going to work or not. So get instant feedback. Rather than working on my own, I can share it with my community and get ideas from the community, which should enable me to improve my skills as a creative. I can also look at other people's work as well, and I can look at this chap's work over here, and I can click on here and it will take me into the Behance platform. You can see if I like this type of work, I can then do something with that user. Now, once I'm inside my Behance platform, once I'm using this and I'm inside my Behance platform, I get access to my profile, and inside my profile I've got email that people can mail me. I also have a portfolio of work. So if I look at my work, you can see here that in my work I've got a number of projects, and in those projects I have different types of work. I also have my work in progress to show me my content, you can see there. I can also sell items, so people use Behance primarily for selling their creative work. It's like a CV, if you like, or it's like a LinkedIn profile for creatives. It's very handy for that type of work. In my projects file, you can see, if I just go into here, I'm trying different techniques on an image here, and you can see there that here's my start image, and then maybe I've burned the sky, so I'm walking the user through this, so doing a lot of tutorials. This is very handy to show how the work can progress. And then I burn the rocks at the front, and then I have a final image, and you can see that I've got multiple versions of different pieces. I also have something called work in progress. Now I'm using work in progress to tell stories and narrative around that piece of work. So if I look here, in that work in progress, typically people use this to show concepts and ideas. I'm actually using this to show narrative about what happened around when I took this picture, to give other people an idea of what else is around this scene and why I chose a certain shot to be as part of this project. So again, it's very flexible, and there's many different ways you can incorporate this inside your workflow. And then of course you have your own profile, which you can then color code and you can change and customize. This is how other people see your work, or my work in this case. Now, one of the most powerful aspects to the Behance platform is the ability to have my content from Behance on my public website. So I'm just going to go to my public website now. It's www.richard-curtis.net, and you can see here this is just a website. It's got a portfolio list on it, and it's also got content from somewhere. So you can see here I've got content from Amritsar and Wrestlers and Chernobyl, and I have my images. I can then click on the images, say Chernobyl, click on here, and you can see here all my images are shown here with all that text. This is brought directly from the Behance platform, so whatever content I add as part of a project will come through into the Pro site, which means I've got another way of showing my work to another creative or a client or another user. This is also available through a browser on an iPad or on a Samsung tablet, and you see exactly the same content. We also have iPhone apps for Behance as a main platform, but also as a portfolio Pro site as well, and that will cache it to the local phone, especially on the Pro site side, so you can see that offline as well as being online, and that will resynchronize if you add new content in. So let's look at how you integrate to the Behance platform, say Photoshop. So let's just go into Photoshop. I'm just going to go into Mini Bridge. In Creative Cloud, Photoshop and Bridge are separate applications now, and Bridge won't be installed as part of Photoshop, so you need to install it separately using the Creative Cloud desktop app, and that's really easy by clicking on Bridge to install that locally. Once you've installed that, then you can then use Mini Bridge, and once you're using Mini Bridge, you can then access the Bridge content from your local computer inside Photoshop. So let's take this image here, for example, and open it up inside Photoshop. That image is now inside Photoshop. Let's now post that to a work in progress and create a work in progress content for this, the adjustments that I may make as part of this image. So on every single window in Photoshop, you'll see the Share on Behance icon. I'm able to click on this, and it will then prepare that image for sharing on the Behance platform by converting it to a JPEG, which will be used on that platform. And you can see here I can choose whether that's going to be new work or revision of existing work. It may that I want this to be new work. So I'm going to say this is my Cowboys shot, and it's out of perspective, and then put a comment in there to start the conversation, which may be, please let me know what you think of this image. And then here in the visibility, I can then make it available to everybody or just a feedback circle. And a feedback circle is a private collection of members that I can manage through the Behance network. If I press continue, I need to create a thumbnail, which I can do to show off this image, and press crop, cover and publish. This will then put it into the Behance network, and I can then share that across my social networks if I'm logged into social networks. I'm just going to skip that and just go to my Behance platform so you can see that work. In my portfolio, you can see in my work in progress, I have now this new work in progress which contains the horses, and you can see there that the comment is over here and the works in progress are under here. Now I may want to make an adjustment to that and make an adjustment, so let's just do that now. So I'm going to convert this for smart filters and do some non-destructive work on this, and I'm going to use a new feature inside Photoshop CC, which is going to be the camera raw as a filter. So go back to filters, camera raw filter, and I'm going to use the new lens correction. So I'm going to use a new upright lens correction. I'm going to make sure if I press the A, it will automatically correct it, but actually I know it needs a full 3D warp. So I'm going to use a full level, horizontal and vertical perspective. And you can see there it corrects it automatically for me. I can then press OK and then bring that back, and you can see that I've got a fixed version. Now maybe I want to do some more work on there and put an adjustment layer in place, which is maybe on my curves, apply curves adjustment level, use auto, so use the content aware in auto to increase the brightness, and then share this out to Behance by clicking on the Behance little share icon. Again, prepare the image for the website, and then I can make a revision. So if I click on revisions now, I see all of my existing work, and I can choose my horses as existing work and then say OK, and then put new comments and say OK, what about now? And then keep them in the feedback circle and press continue. Again, just put another little icon just in case this is the current version, and say crop and publish. I can then socialize that or skip that. If I go back to my Behance platform and just refresh this, you'll now see there's two versions. This is the current version, but I also have the previous version as well. So I can then collect comments from my network. Now, what if I may want to put something inside a project? At the current time, to create a project inside Photoshop and also Lightroom is not quite there. So the best way I've found of doing this is by saving this as for the web. So I'm just going to save this as, I'm going to change the image size first of all to be in pixels and make it 1500 pixels, and then I'm just going to save this into Creative Cloud. So go to my Creative Cloud files, and then in my Behance projects I've got my Cowboys folder, and in here I'm going to have my horses, so I'll call that horses. Now I want to then go to Behance, and in Behance I want to then go to my projects and create a new project. So I can create a project very quickly by create project, and I'm going to turn off the upload files for a second and just rename this to be horses for cowboys. Press save. Now at this point I then want to put content into this project, and I can do that very easily from the Creative Cloud. So use the Creative Cloud icon over here to then pick up content from my Creative Cloud. So I go to my Behance folder and go to my Cowboys folder and pick up my horses or multiple content from there. Maybe I want to pick up this one as well, pick up these two elements and press done. That loads them into Behance, uploads them into that piece of work and gets me ready for publishing that project out. I can then say continue, I can upload an image, and I'm going to upload that image from the Creative Cloud again. Just go to my local folder and pick up the image that I want to use, which is a horse's image. That's going to be my portfolio, my project start image, crop that one. And then I need to put some information about this image so people can find my work. That's the main point of using Behance. So digital photography, project tags are Cowboys work, project description is the same, Cowboys work. Make it visible to, again I want to have it so it's to my feedback circle, press done. I can also link this to work in progress. That work in progress I created wasn't public. If it was public, I can link it here and then people can see that work in progress. So you've got level of security over any work you do, and then press publish. And that will create that project then for then you to publish on your pro site, but also means that you can have a place to store your work. Now, the other thing you may want to do and think about is projects are not only just for a series of images, projects may be just for a single image. What you can then do is create something called a collection, and when you create a collection, you can collect multiple projects together. So a new collection may be that you're collecting elements from Cowboys, from yourself and other creatives. You then, in your Cowboys, you can then look at that collection and then you can add projects into that collection. So to do that, you can just go back to the main project. So go back to the main project, which is here. You can then add this to a collection, and that collection could be cowboys. Now if I go back to my collections now, you'll see now I have in there, you can see there now I have in there a collection of the horses that I had. So you can see I can group my project together inside a load of collections. The last thing I want to show you is something inside Photoshop. As I mentioned, Photoshop was linked into the Creative Cloud right at the beginning. So now I can make use of the Synchronized Settings feature inside Photoshop to make sure all my desktops that I'm using, my 2 desktops in that case, are the same from an environmental point of view. If I go into Photoshop and go into my login details here, you can see I can synchronize the settings or manage the sync settings. If I manage the sync settings, you can see I can turn on and turn off my preferences or turn on what's being synchronized between my 2 machines. So I've got my gradients, my styles, my preferences. I can turn them all off, or I can turn off individual items. The conflicts occur is if I've got a settings file on my other machine that I want to overwrite, I can keep my local version, or I can bring my remote version into my local version. We manage that for you, or you can have Photoshop prompt you for that. When you're ready to go, you can then just go into Synchronized Settings, and then you can then synchronize by pressing Synchronized Settings now. What you'll also see on every single panel and window inside Photoshop or your applications is this little box. This little box enables you to synchronize the settings, and it synchronizes those environment variables across those environments. When you're inside the Creative Cloud, under the little icon over here, you can actually manage your application settings, and inside here you've got your Photoshop and your other settings that you're then managing centrally. So you can see and you can manage them by getting rid of them, or you can just keep them as they are. So that's an overview of everything around Creative Cloud and some of the workflows that now we're introducing as part of this version of Creative Cloud, and hopefully you found that some of interest. And thanks for attending, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much. If you've got some questions, then you can input those questions into the Q&A pod. I'm more than happy to accept them now, so that you can get some instant feedback. Thank you.